Is there any film of this kind of silly 80s comedy that even resembles this ending? There's no ending. Up the Creek doesn't end with like a murder-suicide or anything.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody. It's one fucking hour time. I am Evan Husney. This is, of course, the show where we talk about one goddamn movie for one fucking hour. And we got to my left over here, we got Big T, Tom Fitz-G. What's going on, T?
Oh, hey, guys. We are walking headfirst into the 80s, aren't we?
Yes.
With this one.
Yes, we totally are, man. Episode
70s
82.
are a distant memory.
That's true. We're done with that shit. Episode 82, of course, we're going to be covering a movie from 1982, and with us to do that, on my right, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. Marcus, what's going on, man? Welcome back to the show.
What's up? Thank you. Happy to be here. 80s all day.
All right, and yeah, shout out to last week's episode, which was one fucking hour on Blowout. That was a lot of fun. Great response on that. Our first De Palma. That was a ton of fun. But now we are shifting gears into something completely different. Of course, this is a movie that y'all voted on. Y'all voted for, rather, on the Instagram, our Instagram stories for the year 1982, as we're covering tonight. And the winner was this fucking basically ran away with the poll. Of course, we went with deeper cut films because we wanted to avoid the big blockbuster year of 1982, of course, you know, with E.T. and whatever, Poltergeist and stuff. But this movie, Last American Virgin, came out on top. So this will be pretty interesting. Our first boner comedy on the channel, guys. How do you feel?
Wow. I welcome
I'm
it.
excited.
Open arms.
Yeah, open arms.
As Journey says.
Yes.
I'm just kind of dumbfounded by it. Like, I wish people should leave a comment as to why they voted for this movie, because I'm really curious.
Explanation.
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Rationalization.
Well, I think that Last American Virgin, which we'll get into, I'm sure, does have a cult following. I think it does. Yeah. It was reevaluated, you know, in the DVD Blu-ray era. So I think we'll be getting into that. You know, but shout out
Criterion
to the
release.
Yeah. You never know.
No, you're right. It is a big, fondly remembered cult title.
Yeah.
Because as we're going to talk about, it distinguishes itself from a lot of drive-in schlockola 80s, you know?
Yeah, totally. This is definitely a standout, very singular entry into the teen sex comedy. We'll get into it. But shout out to the runner-up episode. That was, I know another one we were really looking forward to, One Fucking Hour in Split Image. We're looking at you. We'll get to you soon, Split Image, because you know, maybe we'll do a series of movies about cults down the line. Who knows? A different kind of cult movie, right? So, but thanks everyone for voting on that. Really, super stoked that you guys picked this one because I think there's a lot to unpack with this movie. But before we get into tonight's episode, I just want to give a quick shout out to the One Fucking Hour Patreon. If you're listening to this show and you like listening to us talk about movies, well, guess what, guys? On the Patreon, you can watch movies with us because we are recording DVD-style audio commentary tracks. And we're going to be starting something totally new up on the Patreon this week. It's a brand new series that we have now called One Fucking Hour After Hours, which is basically going to be bonus episodes that's only available for Patreon subscribers and YouTube Moments or /members. And starting this week, we're going to launch our first one, which, as you're hearing this now, should be up there. And basically, the After Hours program is going to be us sort of talking more loosely and informally based around a subject that is linked to the episodes that we are covering here on the YouTube channel. And so since tonight's film, Last American Virgin, has deep roots within the infamous film production company Canon Films, we thought it'd be super fun to do a bonus episode, basically a one fucking hour on Canon Films, talking about our favorite movies from the catalogs, All of that we're going to be talking about on that bonus episode, which is available right now up on the Patreon. Or if you're listening to this and you want to join the YouTube channel, become a member, that'll be available to you as well. It's pretty sweet because we got special guest Rami Bennett and Lars Nilsson from the Austin Film Society, who joined Tom and I to sort of go deep and talk canon.
Also, let's not forget that Paul Kersey, his character of the Death Wish series, was an architect. And I just have, it's always awkward when he brings up his career in architecture, which reduces every film. Like they tried a little in Death Wish 2 to have him discuss like, well, I'm thinking about, I have another plan for the awning, and having the entryway kind of more open. When it's like,
I've really moved more into just killing.
Yeah,
just raw death counts.
And coming out next week is going to be another audio commentary track that we have lined up. And of course, that is going to be, as we told you guys last week, our audio commentary track on Alejandro Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain, a movie so fucking insane that we couldn't contain it in just 1 fucking hour. We had to watch the whole goddamn 2 fucking hours of the movie in order to encapsulate how amazing and incredible and one of a kind that insane fucking movie is. So the only way you're going to hear bonus episodes from this show starting now and any of our audio commentary tracks is to sign up on the Patreon or become a member of our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. All right, guys, you ready? Shall we do this? Shall we get into this?
Yeah.
All right, let's clock it up. Of course, episode 82, as we said. Let's get it in. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Clock starts now. Okay. Little synopsis action here on the flick. All right. Last American Virgin. Here we go. Easily one of the more memorable entries in the teen sex comedy wave of the early 80s. The Last American Virgin follows teenage Gary, who you might know from Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, actor Lawrence Monason, who spends his days either at school or delivering pizzas, and evenings with his best friends, smooth talker Rick and chubby philanderer David. That's what I'm calling him. Gary develops a crush on Karen, played by Diane Franklin, one of the all-time on-screen crushes of the early 80s. But before he can successfully ask her out, she winds up dating Rick, who doesn't seem to have any intention of staying faithful to her. The first hour of the film is essentially a plotless string of vignettes with the friends experiencing sexual misadventures involving fake cocaine, angry parents, a Spanish nymphomaniac, an outbreak of crabs, and other pitfalls of adolescence. However, the stakes are eventually raised considerably when Karen finds herself pregnant and turning to Gary for help, which sets off an unpredictable chain of events that culminates in one of the early 80s most heart-wrenching and devastating coming-of-age ending sequences of all time. And that's what makes this movie super unique. That is The Last American Virgin. But I want to kick this off to Marcus because it was something you said at the end of last week's episode as we were mentioning this as a possible poll option for everyone to vote on, is that you are a scholar in the teen sex comedy genre.
Dr. Boner is in the house.
Dr. Boner,
Thanks.
You're on the air. Tell us what's going on.
Well, we're entering an era where I actually got to experience it firsthand, the 80s. Even though I was a child, I have a certain perspective on it, as opposed to the 60s and 70s, which I feel like I devoted most of my life into trying to retroactively understand those decades. I have a perspective on the 80s. Even though I was a child, I had an older sister who was a teenager. She was one of the John Hughes teenagers perfectly. So I got, by osmosis, got a lot of the music, a lot of the films. She was a 16 Candles nut, Right. And then just being conscious of it, Revenge of the Nerds was a big movie for me. I'm not a nerd, but I feel like I understand where they're coming from. And, I always love that movie. And then but the main thing was the little show called USA Up All Night, hosted by Rhonda Shear, which is on, I think, from, it feels like more of an early 90s thing. It might have gone into the 80s, but
all right.
Gilbert Gottfried was also a host at one point, but Rhonda Shear was the dope host for it. Right. And it pretty much only exclusively played 80s teen sex beach comedies, So like comedies that were shot in like Fort Lauderdale, yeah, I remember seeing Hard Bodies on there, Hard Bodies 2, and I was just sort of fascinated by how many there were, just how many boner comedies there were, and
So many.
It wasn't just me being like a weird person into movies too. It was, since it was on that TV show, a lot of people my age had an awareness of it, and we would just kind of joke around about them at school, and so. Anyway, so yeah, I definitely developed an appreciation. And later on, when I learned about sites that you could really research and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, like a torrent site or something that might host 80s underground stuff, and I was just floored by. I thought I knew boner comedies, but boy, it goes deeper than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, just the sheer volume. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So these are a big part of your life. Very formative, it sounds like. Tom, did you have any formative boner comedy moments?
Boing. Yeah, I mean, they were unavoidable. Let's put it that way. I mean, basically, here's the weekend when I was going towards being a teenager in these mid 80s. It's like you take somebody's car, you take the bus, you go to the Galleria Mall.
Right.
Okay. And one of the activities, other than drooling over like Judas Priest albums and saying, I wish I had the money to buy this, right?
Yes.
Was you go to the movies. Matinee, they're like $2 or something. And so we just saw everything for years that just happened to play. So, of course, I saw Up the Creek. I saw, what was that one? Hot Dog the Movie. I did see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't even keep track. It's
Hamburger
like
the motion picture.
Which one?
Hamburger the movie.
I didn't catch that one. But
Shout out to my dad's friend who edited Hot Dog the movie. Sorry, Steve, if you're watching. Go ahead.
Steve, what's up? Hot dog. But like, no, but the one moment I will not forget is we saw Porky's.
Oh.
And it was pretty, I'm telling you, there were all these other movies, but Porky's really distinguished itself. Specifically, there's that one scene, which is odd to describe when you think about it. It's like the guy put his dick through some kind of like water fixture in the girl's shower room. Okay, that's specifically what I'm talking about. So he's just like, hey girls, like doinga doinga doinga, and his like weenus is going through this hole. But then the principal's assistant or whatever, the mean lady, she grabs his penis and is holding it like kind of like you're not getting out of here, but it looks almost like she's going to tear it off. It's insane. And if I'm remembering, I haven't seen Porky since like back then. What I'm saying when I first saw it when it came out, it's like it goes on forever, and the audience was a sea of screaming, yelling, laughing, hysterically, passing out, tearing up kids. I've never seen. Ever, except maybe Borat, the nude fight, but I've never seen a crowd fucking turned out like the scene with the dick being pulled in the shower. So I saw the power of it. It is a pretty wild scene. I don't know if you guys have seen it in a while.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
Like,
I haven't.
What the hell?
Yeah.
But the whole film
Shout
is
out
very
to
fun.
Bob Clark, by the way, the Death Dream director, because he directed Porky
Right.
Yeah.
And Christmas Story, like the following year.
and Black Christmas. Yeah,
Shout
No,
out.
Christmas
Bob
Story.
Clark. No, both. He did both.
He did
homie.
Christmas
both.
Story.
And Black
that's
Christmas.
nuts.
Right. But anyway, so Porky's was the most memorable one. But
Right.
like something like Up the Creek, we're like half watching, and it's,
Sure.
and then it's always on cable, and we were sort of just half watching Up the Creek and Hot Dog and Popcorn and Surf Nazis Must Die or whatever, and like it was just ubiquitous. So I was very well versed in those things.
Porky's really landed. There was like an Atari game for Porky's, and it would always get dropped as like it was shorthand when I was a kid for like bad taste in movies. It was like, we're going to Porky's, or I remember Letterman making jokes about it, or
Well, it's got one of the great titles, like, hey, I heard that Porky guy porked the girl in the Porky's. It's just like a very silly title.
What if it was like a really intellectual film?
Right. It's like you can't. It is inherently a punchline because it's like, yes, the double feature night is My Dinner with Andre and then Porky's. It's like absurd.
Oh my god. My Dinner with
Whereas,
Andre
like
makes
Last American Virgin, like maybe like it sounds borderline. Like what do we got
It does.
here? Or Lemon Popsicle, which we'll get into.
Which we'll get into.
Foreshadowing. I'm just saying, like that sounds lyrical.
It does.
But yeah, Porky's just sounds so brute.
It does. It does. Yeah, and I was born in the 80s, so I wasn't, online at all during this time. So I didn't experience this gold rush of this
renaissance
of these wonderful classics. I came to it. I'm unfortunately more the American Pie generation. Who got it
Stacy's mom.
Yeah, right. I got the Stifler version of this.
Oh my god.
I know, cringe.
Shit.
Yeah, I know, terrible.
But it's born of the same
it is.
demon.
Yeah.
It's the
Brothers
same
from
it's
another
just
mother.
yeah, like it was like 15 years later they went, "Hey, let's rehash this."
Yes. Totally. So, but I definitely went to a hardcore teen sex comedy school when I mentioned this on last week's episode too. When I started working for Troma, hey, you got to start somewhere in the film industry, and I got my foot in the door, and that's how they started. Actually, guys, doing a lot of these teen sex comedies before they did the Toxic Avengers of the world. They did Stuck on You and The First Turn On. These movies in the late 70s and the early 80s, and so I definitely got to get to know films like this. I actually released one of the more obscure ones, which is called Getting Lucky, which is a high school, teen sex comedy where a kid finds a miniature leprechaun inside of a beer bottle, and it grants him 3 wishes, and he gets shrunk down into like microscopic size, and is floating around in this girl's panties. It's really crazy. Anyway, so
what is Get Lucky?
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't know that.
Definitely look that up. I actually narrated
It's a little
the trailer.
leprechaun, like
It's
that
a little.
big?
It's a little leprechaun inside of a beer bottle, and he grants him wishes. And there's these crazy, very pervy scenes where the teenage nerd kid gets shrunk down to like tiny size and is inside the panties of the girl. And they did it all like, they like built the perspective sets and everything. It's hilarious.
Like the Incredible Shrinking Man.
Exactly.
Pencil
It's super crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy
so
shit. Okay.
I also narrated the trailer for it too. So if you want to check
course
that out
you
on
did.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers high school.
The rate I'm going, I'll have enough money saved up for college by the time I'm 990 years old.
There's always the nerd.
This is Bill Higgins, the new Buckskins towel boy.
But anyway, so that's my experience. But this movie, Last American Virgin, let's get to it, because this, as I was kind of going in my journey through movies, becoming a cinephile, and getting into rediscovering films from other eras, it was like this one was always, to me, known as being a real gem, because it wasn't like the others. It wasn't like these other films. It had other qualities. It went other places. It had other tones. And a lot of people, obviously the most legendary thing about the movie is its gut punch ending. It has that, which, basically 2/3 the way through the movie, it sort of segues and becomes more of a coming of age movie than it does really a teen sex comedy. It kind of abandons that and goes full on for the drama and the heartbreak and everything. And I was reading somewhere, just in prep for this, that someone was reviewing this movie, like reevaluating this movie, and talking about how this is really one of the only movies in the teen sex comedy boner genre where its lead protagonist has the yearning, has the aching for the woman, because most of them it's just the guys want to get laid and that's it. But this really gets into love and heartbreak and getting into where you really feel that connection between one guy and of course the girl, the lead. So like that sort of longing kind of concept. So, and it's crazy,
it's like
man.
First heartbreak. There's like first love,
heartbreak.
but then there's like
Yes.
invariably like first heartbreak.
Right.
And that's not what you'd expect when you saw this film's advertising, like the poster, probably the trailer. I haven't seen it, but and also that, like you're saying, the first 2 acts, they hint at a more melancholy resolution maybe, but like the first 2 acts of the film are just like, it's almost like Mexican television or like Italo comedies.
Yes. Yeah,
Or it's
totally.
like-
It feels very, like foreign.
like my
It does,
that substitute teacher is quite fetching, like I'm gonna pick up my pencil to look at her legs, it's that kind of thing. Great dumb is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is, and it kind of goes from being very pervy, shocking, and gross, and all the way to like a Francois Truffaut ending, you know, or something.
Dude,
you know, like it
yeah. becomes
becomes like Stolen Kisses or something for a second there. You know, so and of course the last thing I'll say is I'm definitely more versed and I have more reverence for the coming of age genre. I mean, that's really my shit. Like movies like you know Little Darlings and things like that. And this really goes into that territory in that last 20 minutes. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about, but what a crazy tone. I mean, it goes from degenerate to kind of horrific, which we'll get to in the like, you know, prostitute scene, sex worker scene. Yeah. Then it gets to like cute. Dark. Gets dark. It goes then to cute, and then it goes to gut punch sad. So it really has a wide range of tone that this movie kind of goes for. So, but maybe we should get into the backstory of this production because that's also interesting and very unique.
I think that explains the weird tone. You know,
it does
exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Yep, 100%. So the film is directed by Boaz Davidson. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But you know, the events in this film not only are based on his own experiences of confronting, you know, sort of a cycle of adolescent turmoil that he went through, but it also was the subject of a film he made in Israel in 1978 called Lemon Popsicle. So The Last American Virgin is essentially a remake of this film he made in Israel. That was a huge
Just to be clear, if you watch them back to back, it's almost shot for shot. You know, and like it's like the same.
It's like Psycho 98 style. Almost.
Right. It's like the same dialogue, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't veer from it hardly at all, which is very strange because I saw Lemon Popsicle like many years later and I thought, oh, you know, like they did an interpretation, you know, the usual kind of remake concept where it's like, oh, you know, like they threw out like this middle part. No, it's like almost like a weird exercise, like Psycho 98. It's just like, it's funny that they committed to that, because again, as we were saying, tonally, that's where you get those odd shifts because this film, the original film, Lemon Popsicle, has its own rhythm that is not based on like the grindhouse product of American.
Right. It is a weird, like almost watching them together is almost like a weird sociological experiment or like a comment on like the cyclical nature of time or something, because it's like this story happened in 1950s Israel and then 30 years later it happened again. This time in Los Angeles.
In the San Fernando Valley.
And we should be clear with that because Lemon Popsicle is set in sort of a 1950s Israel. As we said, it's autobiographical. But just to give it some context into how successful this movie was when it came out, okay, that it's estimated that it sold over 1.3 million tickets in Israel, becoming instantly the highest-grossing Israeli picture in history at its time. And it's estimated that half of Israel's population came to see it in theaters. Wow. So it's just it was a huge hit, and that, of course, is the reason why they tried to just copy it. Let's just redo it for the English language market. And
it has 9 sequels. So they were like, I'm sure they were like, all right, this is gonna be a hit and we're gonna make 9 more of these things.
And they were hits. You know, I think some of the other sequels were even almost as big or bigger. But just to be clear, like, and this is all very strange and fascinating to me, is it played all through the world. Like we're talking like it played South Africa. It was a huge hit in Germany, Russia, Korea, you know, really. And like all over the world, huge, killed, box office monster. It played, guess what, everywhere on earth except the United States of America. I don't quite still understand why, but I think I do, because distributors in America are probably like, nobody's going to fuck with this shit that you're showing.
No one's going to read it. Like at a subtitles.
The dubbing would be bad and stuff.
Right.
Like, So, and also it looks a little downbeat. Like it looks, what I'm trying to say is I think that sometimes they could take an Italian movie, a sex comedy, and dub it, and they might be able to get away with it feeling like with an American accents, you know, like it sort of might seem like it's a teen movie from America, but this film, there's no hiding that this is from fucking Israel. You know what I mean? And that's just too alienating for like, you know, Joe Bob in the drive-in in Macon, Georgia. You know,
right.
It is
so it
weird
didn't
they
even
really
play in
try
America.
just because the 50s were kicking so hard in the 70s. You know,
They were never. If they thought it would do well, it would have played in America, but it just never happened. So, which is odd because the whole world is having this experience with this film, except everyone in America.
Get this though. So the only success that it really had in America, Lemon Popsicle, that is that it was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for Best Foreign Language Film. And it lost, though, to Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata.
Wow.
How fucking
and
weird
we think
is
our
that?
polls are crazy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just the fact
funny.
that this movie brushed
that.
alongside of Bergman is insane. Go ahead,
I
Marcus.
love
it is weird. Another success that it had here was that like it's kind of like that weird Sex Pistols quote. I think we brought it up in the show before, where it's like not many. Wait, was it? Oh no, what band was? Oh, Velvet Underground, where it's like nobody went to see them play, or only a few people went to see them play, but those who did started like started their own band or whatever.
Right.
It's kind of like that with this, where it's like this movie's inspired so many people. I mean, we'll get into it later, but it inspired so many movies in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And it also brushed alongside another huge part of, I guess we could also say, American film history, especially American genre film history, and that is the legendary, infamous exploitation, low-budget film company Cannon Films has origins dating back to this movie, this project as well. The story goes, I guess, when Lemon Popsicle played in Milan during the MeFed film market, the Cannon Films producer Yoram Globus remembered people getting up to leave a half hour into the movie, and it wasn't because they were walking out. It was because people were basically running to grab the film rights to it, and that's, as a film buyer, I've experienced that too. Sometimes you're like, yep, this is good enough. We got to fucking go. Let's go, and try to buy the rights. And so that's exactly what would happen. And Cannon Films basically, got involved in acquiring the rights to make it into an English language American production. And for those who don't know, Cannon Films would go on to make, weird films like The Apple, New Year's Evil, a lot of the Chuck Norris. Death Wish 3, a lot of those crazy films.
My personal favorite.
Yeah, and sometimes they could get behind a prestige film, like they did Runaway Train, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. They would get up behind a random Godard film here and there. Very weird film history, but, this particular film also is kind of the Lemon Popsicle is like the most direct link to also the owners of Cannon Films, because they're also Israeli. So it is a huge kind of part of, their history and this movie's history. It's just a fascinating...
it kind of made them. I mean, they had a lot of cash influx with this one. So this Cannon was built on the shoulders of one movie, Lemon Popsicle. It's that consequential,
Yeah.
So I guess
crazy.
so what happened then to get us to the film we're talking about today?
Well, so basically they decided that since it wasn't a success in the US market, that let's remake it. And as you said, it does feel like a shot for shot remake, but they also did incorporate some scenes from some of the sequels. So it kind of has like greatest hits of the Lemon Popsicle series is also on display in Last American Virgin. And they decided to update it to get away from the sort of 50s retro nostalgia and to bring it into the sort of, burgeoning new wave scene. So, and of course, we'll get into it. The music in this movie, which is pretty much almost wall to wall, crazy score. I mean, by today's metric, that this would be like a $20 million, music right bill, for that.
Right,
Right
it's like
the
hit
bat,
after hit.
Like U2. I mean, this might be the first time U2 is heard in a movie.
It's crazy.
I Will Follow, right?
I Will Follow, yeah.
Which is, well, the way I look at it too is just like, it's a very hip soundtrack. I don't know who did the music supervision, but like, I mean, Valley Girl, which came out 2 years later, was kind of hip too. But Fast Times at Ridgemont High, it was still a little mired in like who's that fucking guy? Like it's a little more 70s, like Eagles-ish kind of.
Just Cashmere's in it, right?
Yeah, it's still 70s basically.
Right.
But this film, like someone really was hip to like, what do you got? Devo. You got Oingo Boingo.
Yeah, the Cars.
The waitress. Yeah, the Cars. The waitresses. I know what boys like. I mean, that was made to be. Yeah, that was made to be. All these were made to be in teen sex comedies. You know
it is pretty weird because even like I've noticed a lot of times in the, maybe John Hughes would pick a song that people connected with people or something, but a lot of those movies they pick like B-sides or filler tracks. Even Valley Girl's got cool songs on it, but it has, some like bands you don't know or whatever. Like they must have shelled out for this,
Yeah.
And the original, the Lemon Popsicle has a ton of hit songs too. From the 50s, really big songs, Chantilly Lace and, like mega hits. So I think it must have been in front of their mind was like, this movie needs a lot of great big songs in it to capture the era,
Lemon Popsicle was also a hit as far as a soundtrack.
Yeah.
That was a high volume. Like that was for a lot of people. Yeah, it was the sex comedy stuff, but like really it was the soundtrack really ran away too. With everybody. And it was, it was like very integral to the there's no Lemon Popsicle without that 50s rock and roll score.
Yeah, it feels deliberate. Like it feels deliberate. Like they were like they needed to get big songs in this or whatever. Where other people might be like, well, we could get away with like just a
to
throwaway
match
track
what
by a
they
local
had done
band.
so successfully with Lemon Popsicle,
because same model.
They saw the value. They were like, this is like what is a kid in 1957 the equivalent kid listening to in 1982?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's fucking Whip It, or whatever.
Yeah,
Devo.
And it drops like 2 or 3 times too. Like it's not like they're chinsing on the usage. They definitely get their money's worth. But it also has the soundtrack. While we're talking about the soundtrack, it also it has the REO Speedwagon track drops pretty hard in this. But it also has
that
keep on loving you.
Yeah, and it also has the 80s R&B flavor as well. It's got the
I did my best, but I guess I wasn't good enough.
I did my best, but I guess my best wasn't good enough. 'Cause here we are back where we were before.
Yeah,
and
it's
got love James Ingram, right?
Yeah.
All the kids were rocking that.
Yeah. Well, we did talk about this before. I mean, you're at the party, you dance to Devo and Blondie, but the makeout slow dance stuff.
Yep.
It was half Journey and like open arms. Yeah. But also R&B would happen because you got to listen. You got to make out to something. And I can't really think of a lot of like make out new wave. It's quite at work.
Right. Right. And you got the Commodores on there, and so it's just an incredible soundtrack. It's so amazing, and really does like this movie, as we said earlier, feels like the 80s are coming in hard now. In the movies, especially we've been like covering since we've been doing this whole exercise going from 67 now to 82. It's like here are the 80s, and you can see it. Yeah, the fashion.
Geometric fashion.
Yeah.
It really controls like the mood too. I think the music. It's almost like how Star Wars has these music cues that let you know how to feel. The tracks in this are definitely like controlling your mood, and I think it has a lot to do with like how much fun this movie is to watch.
Totally.
Of course, Gleaming Spires. Are you ready for the sex, girls?
Yeah.
Are you ready for the sex, girls? The hot, lead, hot, big, hot girls.
I know.
Wow.
And
This one's also in Revenge of the Nerds, by the way. But it's always used as a punchline. It's so fun. It's like a fun song.
Classic music cue. Yeah. Well, I mean, just that chorus. Like, it's so. Like we really aren't cusping or anything. We are like knee deep in the 80s. Like like that kind of stupid like sub Sparks like arched like guys like I'm going to do it, aren't you? Yes, I'm going to do it too. It's that kind of that is not 1978 style at all.
Totally, these guys wanted to be Sparks for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
What are the
So-
gleaming spires?
The gleaming spires.
Wow.
You know, there's also that moment where the cars drops really hard, and since you're gone, like it skips the beginning, just like boom, since you're gone. I didn't, Evan. I swear you texted us like 3 weeks ago saying like that this Cars song was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I was
What was
rewatching
that?
this, I was like, I wonder if it was
Yeah.
connected to this movie.
No, it wasn't. That was
Oh.
a different one. It was a different
I
Cars
thought so.
song. But I was listening to the Cars recently and just being like, yeah, these guys knew how to fucking put a song together, man. Like,
Absolutely.
for sure. But yeah, so should we talk about just some of these scenes in this movie? Because like the movie starts out, it's so weird how this movie plays out because it is kind of like these vignettes. The plot is like there's nothing driving the story forward really. We're kind of stuck in these weird scenes where, you know, these three friends, of course, very troped out in terms of their roles. I mean, you have kind of the good-natured kid. You know, we were talking about Gary. You have sort of the cocky, you know, arrogant, you know, his buddy Rick, and then you have the heavier set one. It always feels like there has to be a heavier set one.
There's always the fat guy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
And,
always.
and I'll tell you how to realize that there's a fat guy character is look at their cafeteria lunch plate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it has like 3 chocolate milks and like 5 hamburgers. And sure enough,
Of course.
that trope is exercised in this film. The guy's lunch is like abnormal and crazy. And so they really hit that trope really hard, like the big guy. But I like the big guy. I mean, he's good-natured. And he's, you know, down for whatever. And I think what I'm saying is like he's overweight, but it's also like the other trope is that he's just like the fun-loving guy, which is I guess sort of John Belushi Animal House-ish, you know?
Sure.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, he's super confident though, you know, despite that, you know, like. And
right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's not overweight and just like sitting in a corner. He's like,
No.
where the party at? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
He's actually more fun than the lead character. You know, like he's
you
got more
think?
selfish.
Yeah,
I think
Definitely.
everybody is more fun
everybody
than the lead
is.
character.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. But then, like, I don't know, to me, maybe this is a good place to start. Like, you know, it's pretty paint by numbers in terms of the teen sex comedy scenes that we're getting, you know, trying to get with the girls at, you know, when the parents aren't home and scenes like that, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But then it gets into this crazy sequence in the locker room. And of course, there's always a locker room in any one of these movies. And it gets into this sequence where the nerd, another trope, but you have this weird, confident nerd who basically proclaims that he's got the biggest wang out of anybody in the locker room. Go ahead.
Subtrope on the nerd trope is the 35-year-old teenager. That guy doesn't even look close to young. It looks like he's paying off a mortgage.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like the 35-year-old teen.
That's a prerequisite
film.
with these.
But that's one
a
of
lot
my,
of
go ahead. I was just going to say that nerd is one of my favorites. He kills it.
He does.
A lot of times the nerds are super confident because they lack the ability to pick up on social cues. You know, like Eddie Deazen's characters, whenever he's a nerd, he's always very confident in his opinions or whatever.
Right.
But mainly because he can't read the social cues that people want him to go
Also,
away.
it's hopeless. It's just like, I'm a nerd. Forget it. I'm not even going to try to like ingratiate myself with the girls or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you know.
But like,
so there he is.
But like right off the bat, though, he's like, I got the biggest wang here among all you guys. And then it basically gets into this crazy scene where everyone's busting out their wangs, and we're going to measure to see who's got the biggest
No.
wang.
Please elaborate.
Okay.
If on paper, like you saw the script, for instance, or something, you thought, or just a description, like they like, you know, measure each other's genitalia. All right, okay. No. Erect. They are fully engorged in their underwear. Yeah. And so
the guys measuring are handling.
Yeah.
And it's very graphically shown. And it's like they obviously had to keep fluffing themselves because they're waiting in line to get measured. So it's like, hey, man, I got to fluff up. I'm next here. You know, like it's like, what is going on? Like,
And you guys remember doing that back in high school, right?
Oh, who didn't?
Yeah.
But like, no, but it's like close-ups, you know, of like weenuses fully, you know, fully sailed, and in like white shorts, and it's just like many shots of that, and it's like that's pretty outrageous.
It
like,
is
I don't think I've
outrageous.
seen-
No.
I mean that's the definition of a boner scene right there.
It is,
you know?
and it's like the two lead characters then at the end of the line facing the kids like at a desk, like, you know, ready to make notes and stuff. And like, it's just like so many times in this movie, all the kids are examining each other's genitalia, and it's crazy. And that to me screams, you know, not an American film, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, like you would never see that in American film.
Exactly.
So right off the bat, it's like, wow, this is crossing some boundaries. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and sure
not
enough,
just American film, but just American culture. You know, it's like not something that we can identify with.
Yeah,
so
not at all. Reflects
people in Italy are doing
there's
that
a bunch
all
of things
day.
like that. I guess it is just from
hold
adapting.
on. So just to be clear, just to talk about how like this is really almost shot for shot, you might think like, did that happen in Lemon Popsicle? And every bit of what we're describing happened in a 1978 Israeli movie. And I'm just gonna say my vote for like the moment that the guys ran over and said, "I'm buying this film," was after that scene, which is early on in the film, because it's outrageous in 2023. It's crazy. You know?
It is crazy.
And I think that is what put Lemon Popsicle on the map. That early scene in the first 10 minutes, because it's an insane set piece. You know, like I can't think of anything like that before it.
Yeah. A lot of the sex stuff feels like hard to identify with, you know, like from an American perspective. Like you wouldn't go out with your three buddies and all bang the same prostitute. You know, like it doesn't feel like something that happens here, but then it happens in that movie. So I always, in Lemon Popsicle, it happens as a memoir of what happened, you know, of the 1950s. So I was sort of wondering, like, is this something that, like, you know, in Israel they can identify with, generally speaking, you know, like, or is it something from is it a relic from the past era, like in the 50s, things were more, you know, I don't know.
I don't know if it's localized to Israel. I think America's the outlier here.
Definitely.
And I think that that's probably not uncommon.
Right.
Not throwing shade on anybody or don't judge or anything, but I could see that happening in like Brazil, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I think more we're prudish and a little weird and uptight here.
Yeah, that's true. It does happen like in Biloxi Blues, you know, that Neil Simon play. They all go to the same prostitute or something. But that isn't war, you know. But,
well, I also think, too, it's kind of like there are cultures who are like, even like, well, my kids turn 14. I'm going to send them to, you know, the prostitute.
Exactly.
Make them a man, you know.
I think there's a huge cultural... America's just prissy and weird and like you know, we're too good for that kind of guttural stuff. Although I'm sure that stuff would also happen in more lower class quote unquote places in America too. Sure. It's just, but it ain't
that's true.
Suburbia, San Fernando Valley mode.
No.
So it seems weird in this film's context. Yeah.
Right. So then we sort of meet, you know, this melancholy figure, Gary, the lead character, who's painfully awkward. And, you know, he falls in love with Diane Franklin's character quite easily, love at first glance. And it's so, like, hard to watch him in the beginning when he's just, like, you know, driving her to school. And he's like, how about that big meatball sandwich?
I know.
How about a big meatball sandwich?
No, thanks. I just had breakfast.
She's like, I just had breakfast.
Yeah,
it's 8 in the morning. You don't want like a sub with like 3 meatballs. Yeah, he really is. He's pretty hopeless.
Yeah, he is.
God bless him. He's our protagonist.
Yeah, he is. He is. And so we sort of follow with him. Is there something you're gonna add on to that? Some meatballs?
Oh, I was gonna say shout out to Diane Franklin for being like kind of an 80s girl. You know, she's in Better Off Dead. You know, she's the French exchange student. And then she's also in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. She's like one of the princesses.
She's also like, I think the same year, like in the super gnarly Amityville 2.
That's right.
That's right. She's so bad. Yeah, she's pretty wild. I think she doesn't have a nudity clause. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
in her contract.
Not at all, no. And so, but really one of like the other just crazy set pieces, as we alluded to earlier, is the 3 friends getting together. It happens twice in the film, going to basically essentially all bang the same woman. And the first of which is this kind of like very culturally insensitive portrait of a Spanish woman that they
almost like Cheech and Chong level.
It is. Yeah, it's bad.
It's a sort of like bored middle-aged housewife, like Mrs. Sexually Rapacious, like Mrs. Roper or like Blanche.
Another trope.
Yeah, it's another stock character.
Well, and then Stifler's mom.
Totally.
His mom's got it going on.
MILF.
It's MILF. Yeah. It's MILF time.
MILF time. No, 100%. But that's contrasted by a scene later in the film, which is under the same sort of pretense, but man, is it dark and disturbing. It's like where, basically just like the mood changes, Gary's getting angry about Rick and the fact that his best friend is sleeping with his crush, Diane Franklin. And then he gets in a weird headspace where he decides to appear to be more badass, saying that he's been sleeping with this gnarly sex worker on the corner. And they basically all go out there. And the scene is really grim. And it's like there's like flashing red lights. And like she basically humiliates Gary, and it's really uncomfortable. And she's trying to fluff him in the scene. It's it's really
and
great.
let's just put this in context too. Like, a lot of people, we all think of this film where like the ending is crushing, but I was pleasantly surprised. Like, there's some breadcrumbs to get to that crushing final moment in the film. Like, for instance, around this part of the movie, he gets very drunk at a party.
Yeah.
And he's seeing, his crush and his friend, and they're hooking up and kind of feeling each other
kissing,
up.
yeah.
And he gets like embarrassingly drunk, and I love embarrassingly drunk party scenes.
Yeah.
And my soul was like, oh, can we just have more of that? Because that was underrepresented in the early 80s too. Because it's not flattering. It's not very cool. Like, no one's like, let's go to a party and like embarrass ourselves and say weird things like, tell her I really love her, man. It's like, it's not a good look.
You're right.
So it's not a fun fantasy dream thing. So just for me personally, I'm like, God, can you stay more here? Because I was done with it by the time another sex romp thing happened. Because I'd been settling into like his basically his character, and he has been drinking a lot. And back to what we're talking about, the prostitute, he's getting very drunk in the prostitute scene, and after he has this misadventure with the prostitute, he's like almost throwing up from like.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that real quick. The scene is just bookended at the end after the grim encounter that he has with her.
Yeah.
He basically is like dry heaving in the corner. And it's like this, like this movie's becoming like Christian F or something for a minute.
Yeah,
like it's like
in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, I know. Like,
I love
it's like,
that.
what the fuck? Go ahead, Marcus.
Also, just a tiny little thing about the like tonal shift subtleties, more in the middle. Last little thing is just right. This part of the movie, you find him later just sitting all alone at the pizza shop. That's just like 2 hours earlier was populated by everybody in town, but then he's sulking there at like 1:45 in the morning, and like those little notes struck are really nice.
Really nice. Yeah, Marcus, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I'm still talking about the prostitute scene, and I need to go back on what I said earlier about that not popping up in other movies, because I'm just remembering that there is a prostitute humiliation scene in Porky's, actually, where they were going to all go, the four guys all go to the same prostitute, and she humiliates them. I mean, Porky's, I think, is definitely like inspired by Lemon Popsicle,
Right.
Definitely.
It's sort of like the redneck version of instead of making it set in San Fernando Valley, they set it in
it's like
Florida.
Yeah, because it's the same year as
Porky's
American
is 81,
version, right?
It's 81.
Oh, it's a year before. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a year before.
All right, okay. So it's Lemon Popsicle influence.
Yeah, it's
well.
weird.
Anyway,
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna jump just for a second to talk about just this era for like movies in the 80s, because like 81, Fast Times came out in 81 too, which also has a similar vibe, but it's not as horny as this one, and I think like the horniness is what sets like Lemon Popsicle and Last American Virgin, like, and just the boner comedies in general.
Right.
But Fast Times is a weird thing too, just like that origin story. Like Cameron Crowe was like went undercover in high school to become a high school student or something, and then
he was only about 21 years old.
Right.
So young as a writer for Rolling Stone,
It's crazy.
He could pass as a high school student. Yeah.
But it feels weird. Like Fast Times at Ridgemont High sounds like a headline for a Rolling Stone article or something. Like it sounds like it is. You can kind of see how that is still part of the 70s, like you said.
Yeah.
But this just feels like,
what you mean.
I don't know. It doesn't. Fast Times doesn't feel as connected to the boner comedies, as this one does. Obviously,
It's not one. It's
not. No.
Yeah.
It's a different animal.
Like, and actually, the only sex in the film, other than the weird fantasy that, Judge Reinhold is having.
Yeah.
There's the fantasy with Homegirl, but otherwise, there's like, accident and then having to deal with it medically, and we'll get to that right now.
Right.
Because we're getting to that part of our movie, American Virgin, right?
Yeah, just real quick before we do, of course, the tone shifts yet again from this really dark, disturbing, sequence we've been talking about to, then they all get crabs from the prostitute, which is like, holy shit. Right. Like gotta have that.
It gets pretty Benny Hill.
Yeah, it does. It does. So it's just like,
I'm itching like crazy.
Yeah, I know.
And I go, Mrs. Crabapple. I gotta,
Right. Yeah. So it's the tone is just all over the place in this movie.
I know. But that's what I'm saying. Like because it got really sour with the prostitute and that party. I keep harping on. But then it goes back to the silly.
Oh,
like there's no other way to interpret it. It's just like, oh, the boys got crabs,
Yeah, no, and you were saying about the party, being drunk at the party too. That is also kind of ahead of its time too, because I feel like that would become a trope, into like the super bad era or like other movies like that. You would see that. So and that's like I almost kind of wish there were more scenes like that in this script.
Yep.
Because like There's a lot of weird zany shit happening for zany crazy sake, but a scene like him being drunk and embarrassing and humiliating himself at a party underscores his character. It develops his relationship, that his love with Karen and everything. Mm-hmm. So I wish there was some more craft in those first half-hour scenes, because really when you put this movie on and you start watching it, it feels like little vignettes that aren't even like, in any sort of linear narrative order. Right. But it's all about, shout out to our episode we did probably well over a year ago. We did 1 fucking hour on Lost Highway, shout out. Where we
I did not know where you were going with this.
where we were
not
saying
what I expected.
Well, we were saying
go ahead. Sure you got the right movie.
I do, because we were saying we were big first 20 minutes guys with that movie. We were big first thirders, with Lost Highway. Well, with this movie, we're big last thirders. With this movie, with Last American Virgin, and that's really when this movie does take a full U-turn. And like I said, it starts to go into something more heartfelt, more soulful, and it gets into that coming of age genre more so than the sex romp stuff. Yeah. And it really starts with, okay, so now his best friend Rick has slept with Karen and he's depressed. It's probably getting into that scene you were talking about, alone at the pizza shop. And then we overhear Gary seeing that there's something wrong between Karen and Rick, and he's overhearing her say something to him. And of course, we learn that Karen is pregnant, which is a pretty wild, thing to drop into this world, right? That's like, okay, shit's getting serious now for the first time.
The consequences of all this frivolity,
Right, exactly. And so then it's like this scene where then, Gary springs into action. And he's going to want to now, he sees his opening to sort of help Karen with this. And it becomes very adorable where they pretend to go away on a ski trip. And, that's the cover for the parents. And then he basically...
I love that they make a little domestic life.
Yeah.
That's a really nice touch. And like, that's another sort of fantasy of like this film being different, like more about, this like young couple, high school kids having this like weird weekend of a made-up domestic life, like, hey, what's for breakfast?
Yeah, your eggs are getting cold. Yeah, what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
They play house.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Totally. It's very, very adorable, very coming-of-age movie type scene that you would see in that. But at first, I was like, whoa, he's taking her to his grandmother's house. Is like a safe house, and I was like, what is he going to perform, like a home abortion? Like, what the fuck is going to happen next? Like, because I was like, I'm going to take care of everything, and I was like, what the hell?
Right.
But we get this crazy scene, man. It's one of the craziest. Like, it kind of reminds me of The Visitor. Shout out to our episode on The Visitor a little bit, because it gets into a crazy montage that is intercutting. Is this where the U2 song plays, or am I tripping? It's one of these.
I think it is. U2's "I Will
follow
this montage.
I will follow. Yeah,
I will follow.
Yeah,
I will follow.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So U2 is playing while Homeboy is selling off his stereo at a pawn shop, while she's getting strapped into stirrups you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then the
rubber
fucking,
gloves are being snapped, right?
Yeah, rubber
Very
gloves
realistic,
are being snapped,
very
and she's,
like very unfun.
the anesthetic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it gets grim again, but it's like really harsh.
She's weeping. She's
Yes.
totally nude, and she's getting ready for this procedure. She's just bawling her eyes out.
I know.
Pretty intense, man.
Yeah.
Really intense. Yeah.
That's it's a good moment to mention that overall this film has a much higher bar of like filmmaking quality compared to a lot of these films that are of the same ilk. Not only I think maybe partially because it's a revised version of a story, doing it again, and then them thinking it was going to be a hit, so they invested money in it. It's not just a cheap throwaway.
Right.
One Crazy Summer feels kind of cheap or whatever, right? But I had a third point, but I can't remember. But the cinematography looks good in this movie.
Yeah,
it's shot really well.
Yeah,
and shout out to Adam Greenberg, who shot both Terminator movies and got an Academy Award for shooting Terminator 2. Yeah. So the DP of this movie is like a king shit DP too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So they go through with the abortion. That's when they get to Grandma's house and they play domestic life, and then so he's basically nursing her back. Also, gotta love when he shows up to the hospital, with a bag of oranges and a small tree.
Right.
Gotta love
Which
that.
Is very foreign. It's very it's what you do in the old country.
Yeah,
for a bag of oranges.
Yeah, right.
Which is so not like 1982 San Fernando Valley, as I keep saying.
Not at all. Not
Very
at all.
weird. It would have been like chocolates or something,
Totally. And so then nurses her back, lets her sleep alone in the bed. He's not creeping on her at all. And he's, goes to sleep on the couch. And you pointed out earlier before we started rolling the sad Christmas tree in the back.
I love the sad Christmas tree.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch that they're having
It
this
is.
weird, sad Christmas after the abortion in dead grandma's apartment. It's very strange. And also, I got to say, I mean, he's not hitting on her, but he's giving no hint that he's really has not an ulterior motive, but he has romantic interest in her. So that gets him immediately hard into the friend zone. And she's making it clear basically that like she's almost says like, you're in the friend zone, like you've been a great friend to me.
A friend, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And this is the term friend zone didn't even exist in 1982, I don't believe.
Right.
It happened, but I think like this is an early example of friend zoning in movies.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, it's a friend zone horror film. Yeah.
It's true. They do kiss at the end of that sort of sequence, right? Like so there's like I know she's totally friend zoning him, but I think that they have kind of like a kiss, which I think gives him enough hope. Maybe we see through it as the audience, because we've been sort of repelled by his longing glances at her through the movie are kind of repellent even for us.
They
I
are.
think,
But
he just stares at her.
She's
like,
in a vulnerable place, so like he's not manipulating her. He means well across the board, and he does care about her as a person. He likes her as a person. I can feel that. But like she's in a very fragile emotional state. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone in that fragile moment gets tender with someone, but like he's making all that cloudy. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not just meeting and like, hey, we met at a party and I like you and let's go hang out and make out. It's like he's trying to get romantic in this very intense emotional situation for her as a human being.
Right.
So that's a little
traumatic.
Kind of weird.
She's like
But he doesn't
traumatized.
know.
But all
But
this.
he doesn't know any better.
Well, he's
like,
young. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But that in this moment, as you're talking about, he does profess his love. He comes out in the out in the open and says, "I love you," and then there's this embrace and like the kiss and the whole thing, and that immediately brings him from 0 to 60, and he goes to get a heart locket engraved for her birthday.
Karen, eternal love, or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that sets up.
Slow it down, homie.
Yeah, I know. Yes, so settle down. Because this all then is building the stakes perfectly for this movie. It's building all the dramatic states for him to get him and our guts punched by the end of this film. And so then he basically shows up to her birthday party. It's a big new wave dance party. And he walks in, where's Karen, opens the kitchen door, and great music cut there too.
Yeah.
And it goes bam, and he sees her making out again with fucking Rick, man. And
I
did my best, but I guess it wasn't good.
It's crushing, and
it is. It
this is a movie scene where it's all about the faces. You know what I mean? And they do a nice performance. Her and him,
amazing.
And the director did a nice job. Nothing's overplayed. The subtle shock right on his face. Her
great close-ups.
Shock at seeing him and feeling for him. And feeling just sort of bad for him, but
she communicates a lot though in that gesture that she makes. She makes this gesture as if like it's a smile. It's like a, I know I just broke your heart smile, but it's also like, you know, it's almost like an awareness that she did him wrong. Not that like she should have ended up with him or anything. But like it's a lot's going on in that little gesture that she gives him as one of the final
I think she
shots.
also might be thinking, because who knows where she's coming from, kind of, and she did just have this traumatic thing. Like a part of her is probably thinking like, why am I back with this guy who's kind of a dick, and he just got me pregnant and like shrugged, like she's probably feeling it's forcing her to maybe think for a second, like, okay, I did choose Rick, like, what am I choosing here?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Maybe, but it also doesn't.
It's very subtle.
It's very subtle, but it also doesn't feel, which I also appreciate about this movie, because you know, anytime you watch these these boner comedies, they are cultural artifacts from another time where other things were, you know, more allowed and accepted culturally than they are now, of course. But what's great about that ending and why I think it holds up, the ending specifically, is because it doesn't feel like not like I don't want to say men's rights, but it doesn't feel like oh fuck that bitch, she should have been with me. It doesn't. It doesn't feel like like he's going to become a school shooter after that or anything. Like it feels like this is a lesson, and this is a painful adolescent sort of learning moment, that's formative, that's going to make an impact. And what's great about it stylistically, and I think why people are even still talking about this movie today, and why it has a cult sort of following, is because of that fucking great shot of him driving away, the music's playing, credits roll. And that's like one of those hard 70s, brutal endings that I love, where like the movie shouldn't end there, but it does.
Right. Well, no, it shouldn't end there, but also like, I love when this happens, when there's the unexpected credit scroll.
I love it
because that means like their story's over, and you might have thought like there would be maybe a morning scene. Like you don't know this movie is going to end with him driving and staring off into the distance. It could be like maybe there's a morning scene. Yeah. Maybe he talks to his mom. Maybe he and her talk a little bit later.
Right.
Like
there's no resolution. There's no after the climax. There's no resolution. And like you see someone. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say like the credits is the final note struck, and it's sort of like pencils down. You're not getting any more from this film, and that can be pretty intense in a moment like this because. Like what I'm saying is, it's not unresolved. I mean, life is unresolved. You're not going to watch this guy's entire life until he dies. Of course, that's not what movies are. But I'm saying that like
it makes us
the
reflect.
film has decided to end on.
Yeah, it makes us makes us sort of reflect and be like, oh shit, that's it, man. Why is that it? Oh wow, fuck.
It is a sad ending. I mean, a lot of in other movies would give him like a second chance, like like John Hughes, who would take this kind of template and refine it further into the 80s and make a teen romp comedy like 16 Candles, or or like Pretty in Pink. John Cryer, Ducky. That character gets turned down by Molly Ringwald, and it's a heartbreaking moment. But then they throw him another girl to be hopeful, like maybe there's maybe there's something for Ducky to be hopeful about. So like it feels like a little bit warmer.
Well, here's how this film could have ended. Oh, just tiny like an experiment of like how this could have played out, and maybe let's say John Hughes would have handled it.
Right.
He had that other girl in his life who was very interested in pursuing him. Side note. She's
Twin
a fucking
Peaks.
receptionist from Twin Peaks, and that's
Yes,
Yeah, it
Lucy
is.
from Twin Peaks.
Lucy,
Yes.
right. But anyway, so like I could see maybe a John Hughes or maybe a producer saying, "Can you give him another girl at the end?" Hello?
Yeah.
Like I
Well,
could see another film.
Can I say
He's driving. Oh, just tiny thing. He's driving. She says, "Can I get a ride?" And then he starts talking with her, and that's the Hopi ending with the other girl, the blonde girl.
And that's why John and that's why John Hughes is super successful, because he knows that that's going to bring the box office. An ending like that make people feel good by the end of it. We've sold this as a comedy. We don't want them walking away all depressed. And but then again, that's why this movie is timeless, and why, well, in some respects, that's why the ending is timeless, and that's why we talk about it to this day, because it's very bold. And it's like Blowout from last week. Shout out. Again, another ending that was not good for box office of its time, but is an ending we still talk about. And so I think, so kudos to them for being that bold. I mean, it's a low budget movie. They can get away with it. But still, it's like, I mean, you don't really see endings like that. It kind of reminds me of why I like movies, 70s movies to begin with. It's like a movie like Rolling Thunder kind of ends unexpectedly. Like, he's killed all the people that have wronged him. The second that he's killed, spoiler alert, everybody that's wronged him, credits roll. It's done. There's no epilogue, because the movie's not about anything else. It's not about his relationship with that woman. It's about him getting revenge. And this movie is about his heart being broken.
70s endings are savage,
Yeah,
often. And
it
this
is.
is definitely more like, and just to very briefly go back to Lemon Popsicle, it's weird. It's online on YouTube. Look at the last scene of Lemon Popsicle, and it's the same everything, shots, tonality, great performance. The kid's really good. They're about as good. The revelation of him seeing her embracing the other guy in the kitchen. But it's and also the music cue. It goes from like Little Richard to like Paul Anka,
Lonely,
Mr. Lonely.
I'm so lonely, Mr. Lonely.
So all I'm saying is like that is a 70s ending in a 70s movie. Importantly, my point here is in a foreign film, because happy endings is very America, Disneyland. Like if I was a French asshole intellectual, I'd be like, all you people want a Mickey Mouse romance comedy ending, like that kind of thing. But that is true. America doesn't like bummer endings.
No. And this movie, that's what sets it apart, man. That's what makes it super unique, is that it has this crushing ending that does kind of, it feels very, for lack of a better term, foreign, for the types of comedies that we're seeing. It doesn't feel normal, and I think it's boldness.
It would never, is there any film of this kind of silly 80s comedy that even resembles this ending? There's no ending. Up the Creek doesn't end with like a murder-suicide or anything, for instance,
Yeah. No. I think, and that's what gives it this film its reputation, and why people talk about it as underrated. It's a gem, so on and so forth. But it's tough, man. I was showing this to Raimi, and I was like, no, just come on, just stick with it, with it, and she was just so disturbed by the movie. Mainly its low production value, I think, freaked her out the most. Was that this was kind of a like icky, like depraved, low budget feeling.
She's not gonna like hard bodies.
No, she needs the sheen.
This is too low budget for her.
Yeah. But it was just funny. It's funny. So, but anyway, that's it, guys.
But hang in there. Stick it. If you haven't seen it, stick around, because it is worth it in the last hour.
It is. The last third, man. Last third. It's all about the last third.
Killer.
All right, and boom. All right, there you go. That was 1 fucking hour on Last American Virgin, y'all. You
and
picked
barely
it.
enough time. Again, that's nuts. Like I always think like, oh God, how are we going to talk about Last American Virgin for a whole
like
hour?
On paper, I'm like, I got 10 minutes on Last American Virgin.
And we're all fighting at the end to get it working.
No, I'd love to talk about more. Absolutely. Driving and crying,
Yeah. We didn't really get into, which we're not going to cheat here, but one of the things we did sort of pregame that we were going to talk about was how did films get to boner comedies, and we kind of forgot about that. But okay, whatever. Right. That just goes to show you, man. You got the hour. We got to get it all in. That's it. But y'all voted for that one, so appreciate you guys picking that one. And now we are moving into, drum roll, our last film of the summer series before we hit October. I can't fucking believe it, guys. It's been like how many? 15 of these?
No, I was going to say, remember way back when we picked, or you guys picked, like fucking
Point Blank
Targets. Targets. Like we went from Targets to Last American Virgin.
Yeah.
Was that like 5 months ago or something?
5 years ago.
No, it was, well, we started episode 67. So you do the math. That was 15 weeks ago. So 15 weeks ago, it's over 3 months. It's been like 3.5, 4 months to this whole experiment. So this is it, guys. Next week is going to be the last one for episode 83. We're going to do a movie from 1983, which you'll vote on. We'll get into that shortly here. But then after next week's episode, guys, we're into October. And you know what that means? It's time once again for one fucking October. And we're going to be getting into our horror movie marathon. Talking about horror flicks, probably some pretty obscure, wild, crazy ones. And I know we're going to do a bunch of bonus shows on the Patreon as well during that month. So if you're not signed up right now, patreon.com/onefuckinghour, or scroll down under the video, click join, become a goddamn moment. Because we're going to do a lot of after hours discussions about horror movies, maybe genres, broad topics, things like that, more lists maybe. And that's only going to be available there. So you'll want to check that out. But we're going to announce the 4 flicks that we'll be covering for one fucking Tober on next week's episode. So you won't want to miss that. But let's talk about, guys, what is next week's episode going to be? So you've been with us now for 15 weeks. So all you know that you have to go, if you're watching this in the first 24 hours of this episode airing, you head over to our Instagram page at One Fucking Hour, click on the stories, and you can vote on one of these 4 movies from 1983 and make sure you get it in, because this is the last poll we are doing probably for the year, guys, until we do another kind of poll-related adjacent project. So here's your last chance to vote. Here we go. You ready? So we're going to tell you these 4 films we've picked from 1983. And we'll tell you a little bit about what an episode might be like, and then you get up there and vote. So, Tom, what would One Fucking Hour be like on Scarface?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, it's Scarface. It's De Palma again. It's Pacino. It's very tread-upon territory.
Ultimate dorm room poster.
Ultimate dorm room
movie.
Poster movie. Say hello to my little friend. You know? But I'll say this much, just my perspective. I saw this film 300 times on cable.
Me too. Yeah.
Me and my friends in school would just walk around and going like, her womb is so polluted. You know, like we would just like recite insane, obscure lines of dialogue. My point is, I know every second of this film, and there's the big things that everybody remembers that's very funny.
Yeah.
You know, campy. But there's all these small weird things that still aren't good. It's still total trash. It's trash. It's epic trash. Oliver Stone wrote it too.
Yeah.
But epic trash. But I just know it so well. It's such a warm blanket for me. And there's so many strange, weird, campy things about it that I'd love to just chat about. Yeah. Scarface is a Scarface, man.
I think that's probably what our approach would be, is we would have to only devote time to the underappreciated camp moments that aren't the big set pieces. But I have to concur. I've seen Scarface hundreds of times. I watched it so much as a kid. Oh my God. I love this movie. I mean, you know.
Hello, Marta.
Yeah, right.
Does everybody know what I'm saying?
I do. And it really is, again, it's comfort food. It's campy, warm comfort food. So very excited It is so fun.
Hell.
It's fun as hell. It's not good though. Let's not get it twisted. It's not good. But we're gonna have fun with it. So yeah, anyway, there you go. That's option number 1. Option number 2, Marcus, we audibled into this one. I don't know if you know that we put this on the poll or not, but oh well. I'm sure you'll be down. How about One Fucking Hour and Get Crazy?
Oh gosh. Okay. Love it. It's an all-nighter movie, right?
It is.
And I believe that was the context that Tom screened it in. The first time I saw it was years ago during that. It's another kind of screwball 80s, late 70s. Sorry, screwball late 70s youthful comedy, right?
Well,
there's all kinds of wacky.
Director earlier. You mentioned one of the films by the director of Get Crazy earlier.
Yeah. Well, we did before
Rock and Roll High School.
We did before we
Rock
recorded.
and Roll. Okay, right. It's very similar vibes. Right. Alan Arkish. It's got very similar vibes to Rock and Roll High School. Great music. I just remember the soundtrack's really killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember much about it, honestly. It's a great movie, though. There's the sort of ghostly alien drug dealer guy that pops in and out throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It's very
Electric
fun.
Larry is
Electric
Larry too. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun, it's like like it has parodies of punk. It has parodies of old hippies.
Yep.
You know, it has like Flo and Eddie from the Zappa people doing like a fake version of like old burnt out stoners in the 1983 version of that.
Yeah.
But then also it has like punk as Leaving being like the ultimate punk dirtbag, like Gigi Allen was Taker thing. It's a campy comedy about pop culture, rock and roll, and like the underground lifestyle. You know what it is? It's the movie of that thing I always refer to, which is the huge oversized glasses and the multicolored afro of the assistant. Hold on, of the assistant in talk radio.
Stu,
where it's like I always get it. It's like rock and roll business. Like this film is about like rock and roll business. Like, hey man, roll me into the joint and let's get on the soundboard and like light my fire. You know, it's like and I've gotten to know Alan Arkish, and like he's from that world of like like you're in business and your trade is steeped in like a crazy rock and roll lifestyle, which is full of drugs, random sex, danger, and fun. You know, Get Crazy is great.
Get Crazy. So 1 fucking hour on Get Crazy. That's number 2. Option number 3 is a movie. I know, Marcus, you also really love this movie, and I watched it actually for the first time. I think it was earlier this year or late last year. I had never seen it before, mainly because it has an iconic moment in it that made me that I was well versed in and familiar with, and kind of put me off to not seeing it. But then yeah. Yeah.
Off the shelf.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I did sit down and watch this movie, and I was kind of blown away for how cool it is. And of course, we're talking about 1 fucking hour on Risky Business.
I love it.
Yeah.
No,
Take it away.
I think it took sort of the genre that we've been talking about tonight, actually, like a kind of a boner teen comedy, and elevated it to like another level. It almost becomes its own vibe, you know. It's got a great soundtrack by Tangerine Dream that really owns the tone, and people have been knocking it off for the last 20 years, that kind of propulsive synth tone and hot cars. You know, in the 1980s, you know, I ripped it off myself. Other people did, you know, and it's got great comedic appearances by some 80s nerds like Bronson Pinchot from Balky Partakamos from Perfect Strangers, and then Curtis Armstrong, who was in Better Off Dead and also in Moonlighting. You know, he's just in Revenge of the Nerds, just an ultimate 80s goobers. And then, of course, it's a great Tom Cruise performance. He's super charming in it. Rebecca De Mornay.
We love Tom Cruise here.
I actually don't mind
on Tom Cruise
because I like this movie so much. I don't really have that negative opinion on him that much, you know, despite all the controversies and stuff. Because I always liked this movie, I always had kind of a positive association with him. But hey, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger too. I'm an 80s kid.
Mama, baby.
Sweet mama, baby.
You're not so much into the Magnolia iteration.
Oh, right. Respect the dick.
Mama,
baby.
I just pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Hey, look, Tom Cruise. There's a reason he became a superstar, and this is where he became a superstar. This film.
It is, yeah. It's
Rebecca De Mornay is awesome in this movie too.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's oozing with style. You know, it's a peak 80s style.
It's so well shot too. The movie is incredibly well shot. So we're going to get into
literary adaptation or something. You know, the narration that flows through. It's got almost like a book quality or something.
Very cool. Very, very, very much. So we'll get into that if that's option number 3. If Risky Business wins. Option number 4, though, is a biggie. It is returning to our man, David Cronenberg. We've covered one of his movies. Shout out to The Brood. We did a long time ago now, probably about last year. But we're getting into his big film from this year, 1983, Videodrome, guys. 1 fucking hour. And this movie, oh, man, big, formative, chunky movie for me, man. I mean, James Woods, doing
James
his
Woods
thing.
in La
you know,
Casa.
Yeah.
Channel 83, dude.
Channel 83. I mean, again, we talked about with last week with Blowout, the sort of exploitation film company, posters on the walls.
Yes.
I mean, this is another one of those great.
But this is even cooler.
It is.
Than like kind of like your mom's old like 70s like exploitation movie, grindhouse movie place.
Yeah.
It's a fucking rock and roll, dirtbag, sex and violence cable channel like world. I love that. That
So
actually,
good.
when I was a kid, I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life when I become an adult? I was like, well, how does this work? Because I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor, but I was just like, what if I'm just like work at like a weird fucked up sex and violence you know, like it's all midnight movies.
Yeah.
And anyway, so no, it's great.
No, you're right, because it's like that there's that one scene in the movie when, you know, James Woods is getting like he's getting the Videodrome tape from the woman or whatever.
Samurai
and it's like,
Dreams?
Yeah, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, what is it? What is it? You know, and it's like this guy to be in that position, you know, to be given all this content to put on your channel is very
he's
seductive.
a buyer for like sludge, like Emmanuel Part 5 in space kind of stuff.
You want and then he's like, you want to take a shower with me later or what? You know, it's like, God, it's just sleaze.
Yeah, Debbie Harry's in it.
Harry.
I gotta say, remember I said Scarface, me and my friends would walk around school and recite lines of dialogue. We did that with this movie too.
Yeah.
Like, we would do entire scenes.
Yep.
Right, business reasons, sure. You know, like Brian Oblivion and
Oblivion,
like
man.
didn't affect you because you didn't watch it. You know, Steve Patron. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So America's becoming soft. The rest of the world's becoming very tough. Circling back to what you were saying before.
That's right. Really. Yeah.
Love this movie. It's very fun.
Yeah, it is.
It's not good in my opinion, but it's very fun.
It is. I kind of know what you mean. We'll get into it. It kind of gets into my sort of Cronenberg paradox in terms of...
They all have that a little bit.
Yeah. Like
the good
he's
ones.
they do. We're going to get into the Cronenberg paradox. So there's your 4 options, guys. 1 fucking hour on Scarface, Get Crazy, Risky Business, or Videodrome, the final poll of the summer series. This is great. I can't wait. So get up there now at 1 fucking hour on the Instagram page. Click on the stories and get your vote in, because this is going to be the last one before we go into 1 fucking Tober month. And then we're not going to unveil it here or anytime soon. Well, at the end of October, we got another month program we're going to be getting into even after the horror month, and I'm even more excited
program
about.
Crazy.
We're going to be program crazy going forward. So get ready for all that shit. But I think that's it, guys. But of course we can't leave you without your Moment of Zen. All right, everybody, have a good rest of your week, and we will see you for the last ep of the summer series next week for 1983. So get your votes in. All right, everybody, take care, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
I tried my best, but I guess it wasn't good enough for you to be.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.